The Israeli army raided the West Bank city of Jenin on Tuesday as violence continues to surge across the West Bank in parallel to the Gaza War. Crowds of Palestinian worshippers were allowed in to pray at Aqsa mosque in Jerusalem after the first day of Ramadan fasting. Now, as mentioned, violence in the West Bank, already at a high over the past year, has surged further during Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza. The Israelis banked on military bulldozers while raiding Jenin, and armed clashes were reported. Reports suggest Al-Qassam brigades, Al-Quds brigades and Al-Aqsa Martyrs brigades engaged in confrontations with the Israeli forces. West Bank residents believe Israel is waging war against the refugee camps and is attempting to take advantage of the assault on Gaza to eradicate resistance groups. Earlier on Tuesday, the Israeli Defense Forces said troops nabbed a wanted Palestinian Islamic Jihad member in the West Bank city. Mahdi Fayad is accused of shooting and hurling explosives at Israeli forces. Another two wanted Palestinians were arrested in Jenin and an assault rifle was seized. The Israeli government said they will conduct weekly assessment on how many worshippers will be allowed into the Al-Aqsa mosque compound. Police estimated that 20,000 to 25,000 have entered since the start of Ramadan about 2 days ago. Al-Aqsa, one of the holiest sites in the world for Muslims, sits on a hilltop in Jerusalem's old city. The compound is also revered by Jews as a vestige of their two ancient temples. A deepening rift between Joe Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu over Gaza red lines has set up a potential showdown between the two leaders. It has also raised questions about whether the US might restrict military aid if Israel goes ahead with a ground offensive in the south of the enclave. The US administration is assessing how it could use its leverage to convince Israel to do more to facilitate humanitarian relief and avoid further heavy civilian casualties. Joe Biden's greatest source of leverage is the US supply of weapons. He has resisted using it, despite Netanyahu's defiant response to Washington's nudges and increased calls from some of the president's fellow Democrats. But Biden is showing mounting signs of frustration with Netanyahu. US officials have not ruled out a possible shift in policy that could include putting terms on military aid if Israel carries out its threatened invasion of Rafah in South Gaza. Biden's 2024 re-election bid has complicated his efforts to craft strategy. Aides recognize that he needs to avoid giving Republicans an issue to seize on with pro-Israel voters. At the same time, the US president seeks to halt the erosion of support from some progressive Democrats, dismayed by his strong backing for Israel. Now, any decision by Biden, who has called himself a Zionist, to get tough with Israel would run counter to his decades-old history as an ardent supporter of the country. Israeli warplanes struck deep into Lebanon for a second consecutive day on Tuesday, hitting a Hezbollah facility and killing two of its members. Tel Aviv said that its jets struck two Hezbollah military command centers in the Baalbek area in response to Hezbollah rocket launches towards northern Israel earlier in the day. Tensions in the Red Sea, meanwhile, are showing no signs of easing. The US Central Command stated the Iran-aligned Houthis fired a close-range ballistic missile towards the destroyer USS Laboon in the Red Sea. The missile did not hit the vessel and there were no injuries or damage reported. Now, two drones launched from a Houthi-controlled area of Yemen were engaged and destroyed.